we will proceed straight away to look at the matters that we have to discuss this morning. I ask very simple questions about whether or not we are spending $6.8 million, as been alleged by the NDC, to do audits, or as it were, go on a fishing expedition to find evidence to back the NPP's allegations when it was in opposition that the NDC government was corrupt. Is that what is going on? And if indeed that amount of money is being spent, can that be justified? Is it a worthy cause? And also we go to the cocoa industry and the allegations about the minister seeking $1 million to renovate his residence. We'll find where the evidence really is about all those claims. And there is also the free SHS politics. I'll get my take on my Joy Online so you can share in the take. My guest in the studio this morning are regular panelist and editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Abdul Malik Kweku Bako. Also here in the studio is Professor Ransford Jampo. He's Associate Professor of Political Science and Director, Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you.
It's been a while. We haven't had you on Newsfile. Yes. I was saying a while ago. Right. And also here in the studio is Andrew Ejapa Mesa. He's MP, 2nd D, Vice Chair, Privileges Committee of Parliament, Communications Committee of Parliament. He's a lawyer. Good morning and welcome, Senior.
Morning.
Great.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Right. We should be joined shortly by Nana Oyelitha, human rights lawyer, former Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection. Should be joined by her shortly. Now, we just want to do a quick take the views of my guests briefly on the documentary that was done by Raymond Aqua of JoyNews, and that documentary has been on the top of the minds of many people in the course of the week. That documentary titled "Who Killed the Judges?" There have been questions about the propriety of revisiting the matter because the 2002 National Reconciliation Commission appears to have dealt with the issue. There are those who were actually affected personally, directly, who suggest that the Reconciliation Committee didn't do anything close to, healing their wounds. And so whatever it did was good, but there is the need to keep Ghana's history alive, and that it is not good for us to wait for some foreigner to come and do such documentaries for us to patronize. So on that note, let me start with the professor, the political scientist. Yes. What do you say about to those who say the documentary "Who Killed the Judges"? There must be some reason it was done now, and it must be some political, agenda, and a political agenda that will favor the governing party. All sorts of speculations going on. Of course, there are those who say this is a good thing. This is the way to preserve our history and to continue to give guidance to generations. What do you say?
Well, thank you. I thought you were going to start with Kweku because he lived these eras, and then some of us, even though we were born around the time, were very young, and so we read it.
Right.
And we teach from what we studied and all that. But generally, this is an aspect of a painful history of the parts of the revolutionary nonsense that plagued the country and inflicted hardships, fear, and pain on all Ghanaians, and as you rightly indicated, those who were also directly affected. In my view, I think when I heard that it was being shown and all that, I kept also asking myself, what is the motive? What is the motivation? Why do we want to go back to the past and all that? My view was that, yes, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission constituted by J. Kufuor succeeded in bringing some healing. And then also, growing up, I heard Jerry Rawlings on several occasions apologizing for some of the excesses of the revolution. And then Atamil set up the Constitutional Review Commission, and some of the things they sought to review was the indemnity clauses smuggled into our constitution. And a lot of Ghanaians said, no, don't touch them. I mean, those who violated human rights and inflicted egregious pain on the people of Ghana, let us forgive them and move on as a nation. And so, in my view, yes, if you are teaching and you mention some of these things, a lot of the young student population are not aware of our history. A lot of young people who also constitute the bulk of Ghana's population don't know these things. And so I'm in a little dilemma. How do we educate them about our past without resurrecting the pain and all that? I think we should find a way of letting people know without necessarily going back, because sometimes the pain would bring division, and then it would not augur well, you know, for us, particularly those who were directly affected. And so, yes, let's teach it, let us explain, but let the young people or the youth become aware that, look, we cannot go back to the past, and never again should we allow such human rights abuses to be, you know, inflicted on us and all that. And so I think democracy has come to stay. I don't think we would get to that era where somebody will pick up a gun and then bring about another revolution, and then things will be done, you know, anyhow, in a manner that inflict hardships and bring about human rights.
Okay.
This may be my preliminary comments about that.
All right. So you're a lawyer, and we lawyers and the judiciary, you know, every year there's a commemoration, and of course, thankfully, there's also, you know, the bust of these judges that have been put at the front of the Supreme Court, you know, matters of the rule of law, so that there is a constant reminder of the need never again to get to such a point. So we observe this every year anyway. So do you think it is justified to ask questions about what the motive will be for any such enterprise by a journalist or a media entity?
Well, I guess good morning is appropriate to my co-panelists and your good self, and our cherished viewers out there, and listeners as well. Of course, why would anybody who has clear, good intent question the motive of a very insightful journalistic piece that captures in vivid detail the circumstances and aftermath of the death of these illustrious sons of our country who were killed, if you like, in the line of duty for doing their jobs. Except, of course, tainted with some political coloration. You were part of that regime that, under whose supervision that these atrocities were committed, and do not want this matter revisited. And of course, like you said, this is something that the Ghana Bar celebrates every year in commemoration of the death of the High Court judges who were murdered, and of course the military officers who were murdered in cold blood. You know, I found it pretty insightful, very good journalistic piece, as I've indicated. And I agree with Prof that to the extent that the National Reconciliation Commission sought largely to provide some relief to the people who suffered directly from the consequences of these actions. You know, to an extent, at least, there was a listening ear, even though we never really got to the bottom of who actually, you know, gave the orders for these killings to come on. I guess that even the process itself offered some element of healing. And so to that extent, you may argue that why revisit it? But my point is that this is a journalist who, having researched certain aspect of our history, felt the need to capture it in a certain manner and present it, to the people of Ghana, particularly those of us who were younger and have read it through our study of political science. And look, we're interested to know that I studied political science as well in Legon as my first degree before I went back to study law. So I have a major in political science. So it's useful that some of these things are brought to the fore, so that it informs particularly the younger generation about the kinds of things that happened in our previous, not too distant history, to guide, our actions going forward. So I don't think that this matter should be politicized at all. I mean, it was outrageous commentary that I've heard people say that this video or this documentary was commissioned to divert attention from the hardships that people are going through in this country. I mean, yeah, we as a developing country have problems. Nobody is going to shy away from it. And I'm confident that this government is on top of the game, working very hard to resolve many of the challenges that has been with us for the longest. It is not as if that all of a sudden Ghana has been plunged into some crisis situation when we were in some heaven only a few years ago. We've never been. We've always, government after government, has been trying to resolve our problems by, working to elevate many of our people from poverty. Okay. We have economic challenges from Adam.
All right.
Okay, and so let's not pretend, and say that. So is it being suggested that is the government that commissioned your journalist to, as it were, carry out this exercise? Clearly, cannot be the case.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. And so, 34 years on, this story still brings evokes a lot of things in people, particularly those who were directly affected. Before I take Kuku's views briefly, let's hear son of Justice Kojo Ejapong, one of the judges who was murdered. I'm talking about Kwabena Ejapong, who is an engineer and a politician. Let's hear him.
I just went and slept. So it was only in the morning that we had a loud knock on the door, and it was coming from our next door neighbors, and that happened to be Justice Poku Sarkodie. So the wife came to come and inform my dad that last night the husband had been picked, and that she saw them. I think she argued a bit, but they were able to take the husband away. But apparently it was after that that they came to our house. We're not the next door neighbors. So I didn't even get it. I just got rushed up to my father's bedroom to go and tell him what has happened. I got to the bedroom, he wasn't there. So I went to my mother's room. I said, "What's his daddy?" She said, "He should be asleep." So he's not there. I went downstairs, and the food remained the same way he left it. Not finished eating, nobody had touched it, so we were confused. Then I also ran out of the house and went to Justice Eduse's house, which is just across. The judges used to stay around the Ridge area. So it was when I got to Justice Eduse's house that he confirmed that this was what he called Justice Apalu, who was then the Chief Justice at the time. So it was then that we realized that there was something serious happening, and that some 3 judges had been picked the previous night.
Right. So that's Kwabena Ejapong, son of Justice Kojo Ejapong, who was murdered. We're talking about the night of the June 30, 1982. And so, Kwaku, I have no doubt that if you watched it, you would say nothing new. There's nothing I have seen that's anything new about this documentary.
Honestly, I'm yet to watch it.
Okay.
I've rather seen excerpts, tidbits on social media, but I've read a lot about commentaries being made, so it gives me a picture as to what it is in. And I really want a copy for myself to stay in my room, watch it, and digest it. I have no problem with the decision by your station and is it Raymond?
Yes,
Aqua.
Raymond Aqua.
To undertake that exercise. There are people who have questioned it. I'll be the last person to question the rationale for that exercise. Because as I sit here, I think there are still missing links despite the work of the National Reconciliation Commission, which also came to some conclusions.
Right.
Prof was saying you should have started with me because maybe I was old enough and I've been involved in all these things for a while. The truth is that at that material moment, I was in prison at the Kufrodwa prisons when the incident happened. Fortunately for me, somewhere along the line, America was brought to Kufrodwa prisons and became a very good friend of mine. Very, very close friend of mine. Because apparently we had the same name. He's Samuel Kweku, and I'm also Samuel Kweku. And getting to know that brought us closer. But he had become closer to one of our members who had been detained in his own prisons, Kwesi Agbili. And they shared a lot of confidence.
Is it from where he was with you that he was taken out and executed?
No.
Okay.
He was, and the circumstances surrounding his exit from Kufrodwa prison is exciting. I was part of the conspiracy, quote unquote, please, that got him out of Kufrodwa prisons. And he was sent to Isaomna, subsequently to Osher Fort. He broke jail when the June 19th, 1983 counter coup happened. That's when he broke jail.
Okay.
I'm not ready to tell the story as I know from him. And I'm not the only one. Kwesi Agbili also has his story. And not just the two. See, prison is a very wonderful place. People open up to each other, especially when you build confidences. So many things happen. And I'll tell you, greater part of the 1990s, together with Kobre Japan, Victor Newman and the rest, we had a crusade to try and put the missing links together and get a picture. A lot happened between myself, Kobre Japan, and Victor Newman. I'll tell you, do I go into details, why I still think there is the need to continue the search for the full truth, the whole truth, in spite of the NRC's proceedings and decision. Look, those boys, those young boys, the soldiers, and Amatekwe, what could have been their motive? Perhaps with Amatekwe, because he was a worker at Gehok and was dismissed following a demonstration they organized, an invasion of Parliament, which Rawlings instigated openly at Accra Community Center. They held a rally, after which he encouraged them to openly move towards Parliament House, which they did. It's open. I have the recording as now. When you hear it, you think it was yesterday I recorded it. And then the Gehok management decided to take action against them. So he was dismissed. So you could say he had a grudge against Major Sam Aqua, who was in charge of administration at Gehok. How about the other boys, the soldiers? I'm sorry I say boys, it's not fair, but they were young boys. I knew them. Very young boys, absolutely very young boys. You see, the climate that was created post-AFIC to Liman era, those judges were targeted as reactionaries who had undertaken review exercises on AFIC decisions. They contaminated, polluted the environment with it. There was a real challenge whether the courts had a right or authority to do review of AFIC matters in spite of the transitional provisions or not. All of us were involved in that controversy. But in the process, rumors and gossips were put out that the judges had taken bribes. Even Samakwa, they said he took bribe. He said he was a member of the PNP, and that he had gone to tell the grass on Amatekwe to the PNP, and the PNP had given him money. It's all, if you want, their police statements, the original police statements. I have all here. Each one, it's all here. So with an environment was created that these judges were corrupt, bribe takers. Akwa was vindictive and had organized the dismissal of Amatekwe. But those boys, none of them knew any of these judges. None of them had had any case before the courts or with these judges. They really didn't even know the judges. They didn't even know where the judges lived. So what is it that would have motivated them to go to that extreme? No, it was a grand political agenda that went wrong. Okay?
And beyond the motivation, you are thinking about the access they had.
Who were they? Even within the PNDC contest, remove Amatekwe, who were the rest? And Amatekwe himself, he was just the populist agitator. They were using him to try and get to the grassroots of labor unions. Hey. But he knew nothing. He had no power. If you wanted street action, some hooliganism on the streets, you could recruit him to undertake that exercise. I know what I'm talking about. I'm not doing hearsay. Okay?
Okay.
So this is the setting. When you get that setting, then you tell yourself that, but he couldn't have taken these small fishes to undertake that kind of operation. Now let me give you some few missing links, and that will take you into another realm. When was Amatekwe arrested? By July 2nd, Chairman Rawlings knew those who had perpetrated that hideous act of terrorism, and I'm quoting Rawlings. By July 2nd, 1982, he knew that incident at Gonda Barracks. You remember Justice Akins referred to it at the proceedings. And Rawlings sent this letter, signed by Victor Smith. If you don't mind, I'll read it.
Okay.
He says, "Dear Sir, His Excellency, the former president, has asked me to acknowledge receipt of your letter reference so-and-so and dated February 24th, 2004, and to convey the following comments to the Commission. His Excellency says, quote, what is being described by Justice G.E.K. Akins as contained in your letter seems natural enough to me as what may have happened. I would, however, suggest you cross-check with Mr. Chachuchi Kata for confirmation. What I find rather puzzling is the mention of the name of the late Amatekwe by me, seemingly out of the blue. I would suggest that another invitation is extended to Mr. Akins and any other persons who may have been around then, whether or not the late Amatekwe's name did not emerge as part of the rumors making the rounds." Quote, end of quote. Permit me to use this opportunity to request for a copy of the complete and fuller version of the statement in question by Justice Akins to the NRC to enable His Excellency assist the Commission with this work. It's because Amatekwe walked into a meeting at the Gonda Barracks where this matter was being discussed, and the issue as to the whereabouts, the location of the judges was raised, and he indicated that we have finished them. And I undertook the exercise with Amatekwe and Michael Senya. I have, it's here, it's all in the police statements. So the council, including its chairman, by July 2nd, 1982, knew, one, that the judges were dead, two, that those who perpetrated the acts. Acts then, July 4th, 1982, 2 days after that revelation by Amatekwe, Chairman Rawlings was on air. He spoke to the nation, radio and TV broadcast. And he said, we are searching for the perpetrators. We don't know where the judges are, but we suspect it's enemies of the nation and counter-revolutionaries who have undertaken this exercise. This is also documented. there's a problem there for me. He knew, because he had been told. I'm at this moment carefully leaving President Rawlings, Chairman Rawlings, then out as a perpetrator.
Okay.
Forget it. Okay? But he had been told. Now you ask yourself, when was Amatekwe, when did he resign? From the June time that he told this story, Amatekwe resigned late August. He was sitting in the council. He was a member of the council. But he was known, it was known to his colleagues that he had been part of that murderous act. So why was he in the council? And why did he resign that late? Shouldn't he have been arrested immediately? Same with America. Check when he was arrested. August. For alleged coup plot, not for the involvement in murder of the judges.
Yeah.
These are missing links. These things don't make sense.
And by the time the tribunal hearing
That was 83.
to commit him also to murder had been finished, he had already been sentenced for the coup.
Let me tell you something. The man was absolutely confident he would never, ever be tried or convicted. Absolutely. And I'm not the only person he told. I say he became my friend. For him to exit from Koforidua prisons, we had to stage manage a hunger strike for him. And that's a local station. Health reasons, you cannot be kept there. So they had to transfer him. But in midnight, he was eating gari and sardine that I had organized for him. And I have witnesses. He would reject the prison ration, and it's recorded as having rejected, so his hunger strike was still on. But midnight, as a cell leader, I will organize gari and shuto and sardine for him to eat well, so that the next morning he can reject all the prison rations. That's not only the missing links. But as I said, well, I wasn't contacted relative to the documentary.
Okay.
So
okay.
We will wait. And I'm not the only one. There are many others. I say prison is a fertile ground for sharing confidences.
Okay. And what Raymond Akwa has done, actually this something he's done in a period of 2 years.
Last one.
Yes.
Two critical things. Again, Mr. Rawlings was subpoenaed to the NRC.
Right.
After difficulty.
TRC.
NRC.
National Reconciliation Commission.
Two things. They were requiring him to bring only two things. Two recordings. The Amatekwe one, and there was one, the other one, it has escaped me, I think the Riyadh one. You know? He said those tapes were with W.O. Tete, who had died. The Amatekwe, there were two kinds of tapes. The confession or whatever he said in the chapel at Oshia Fort, and the one he said at the firing range before he died, which Kojoyanka, I think,
reported about
got sacked for it. When you have these things missing, who will tell you the story has ended?
Okay. All right. So like I was about explaining a bit to you that the documentary, Who Killed the Judges.
The last point. Yeah. And I'm sorry, the last point. Okay. And that one, it goes across the political divide. America escaped 1983, June. No Ghanaian government or state body has ever attempted to look for him, at least through the Interpol.
Is he still alive?
Well, until last 3-4 years, I knew he was alive. As to whether he's alive now, I don't know. But he used to be in Benin, Togo, Nigeria. Some of the exiles were there, they met him and all that. There were also soldiers and other guys. But you see, it struck me. Why is it that this fugitive from justice, Ghanaian justice, was never put on any platform? We never requested, all governments, from PNDC to today.
Okay. This was supposed to be preliminary, and I was saying that what Raymond Akwa has done in Who Killed the Judges is part of an extensive documentary session he's doing on crimes that shook the nation, So this is only one aspect of it. There are other aspects that he'll be doing, and this is what he informs us. It's taking him about 2 years to conclude, and to get people like Chachikata to speak to the matters and to try and explain and correct impressions that had been created. And if you listen to Chachikata, explain clearly what he thinks are misinformation about the involvement of Kojo Chikata in those matters. And there are some of them who declined to comment as well.
Maybe we should find Captain Chikata under the NDC administration, I think late hours when he had exited. If he's listening, I'm sure he can't deny what I'm saying. Attempted or sought access to BNI records relative to this issue. And the powers that be declined.
I see.
There was a reason for that.
What's your suspicion?
No further comment.
Okay.
I don't think
All
we're
right.
being fair.
So
No further comment.
So let me welcome Nana.
No further
Let me
comment.
welcome Nana Oyelita to the platform. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Always good to have you. Kofi Bento says that we Africans are not very good at telling our own stories. That's why foreigners have distorted our history. The Jews lost 6 million people in the space of 6 years, but they make sure we remember every year. Africans lost tens of millions over 400 years, and we don't make much noise of slavery. We should have more documentaries about every aspect of our history from 1944 and even beyond till dates. Good job to Raymond Aqua. So let's take Nana Oyelita's very brief also on this matter. She's also a lawyer, so she's been part of the group that organizes a remembrance service every year, and it's been done consistently. And we did the 34th this year, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very refreshing to hear from Mr. Kweku Baku, and I see your documents at long last. I see your documents. But on a more serious note, I recall as if it was yesterday. I had finished, I must have been in Form 5, I had finished my O-level, and that was during the Nungwak Plejo Homowo Festival. So I'd come back home with my brothers at Kolebu, and I was watching television in a neighbor's apartment, and then I saw Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings on air. It must have been 4 or 5 o'clock, because we all knew the judges were missing, where he came to make that announcement that the charred remains of the judges had been found. It was very chilling. And then as a lawyer, together, attending some of the memorials, and even when those memorials were being convened, the difficulty the Bar Association had in actually convening it's just like it was yesterday. But the very important thing is that in the life of every nation, there have been those blots, and there are blots on our landscape as we develop as a country. And this is one blot. And that is why when you look at the themes of the Bar Association, it's like never again. We should never forget and never again. And we have a National Reconciliation Commission process. To what extent did it heal? To what extent did it heal? And how have we learned from this moving ahead? Every country has had bad moments, and this was a bad moment, a very bad moment for us, and shook the pillars of our nation. I believe that we have made some amends, and we are healing. But it's very worrying that we still see a divisive society, split along the lines of politics, and even split along the lines of ethnicity. And I'm hoping this documentary by Joy will remind us of moving on and healing, and using this mistake to further strengthen the structures of our society. Okay. And I believe this should be the objective, reminding us and helping us to move on.
Okay. Right, so she makes a point that makes me feel that I'll rather read my take next week, because there's that point about, you know, moving on and, you know, fostering unity, you know, cohesion, and making sure that we're people who really, you know, have love and move on in that direction. Now, the Who Killed the Judges documentary, there will be a repeat broadcast at 4:30 p.m. Today, and also on Sunday, 4:30 today and Sunday. So you can watch, for particularly those of us who didn't have the benefit of that history, we can follow the bits and pieces that you find in there. We'll take a break here. When we return, we'll find out if this government, in the name of fighting corruption or fishing evidence to back its campaign claims that the Mahama administration was corrupt, has spent $6.8 million doing audits. What's the justification for it, if that's true? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And before we move on to the audits alleged to have cost the nation $6.8 million in fishing for evidence against Mahama appointees, some of our viewers and listeners want me to remind Kweku Bako that they are still waiting for his memoir. He should make this a chapter of what he's going to write, because he seems to have so much information, but he's reluctant to give it on air. So, Kweku, that's for you. That's your memoir. They suspect that you would dedicate a chapter to Who Killed the Judges and tell the story. And some have been asking, but for Providence, if it hadn't rained on the night of the 30th of June, these bodies would have been burnt to ashes, and there would have not been any trace.
Let me tell you something. I read somewhere, I think on your website, that America was brought to prison mad. This is narrated by a prison officer. Okay. You know what? He had a problem. He had seizures, is it what you call it, occasionally. Okay. Yes, even in Koforidua it happened. And when you ask him why, and there was one time, Koforidua prisons, we had somebody hitting his head. No, we didn't know it was, but noise from the toilet. No, it was, no. When we went there, was him. Was hitting his head hard on the wall. When he gets sober and you ask him what's going on, he tells you that he sees Cecilia Krantiando consistently, and anytime that happens, he gets into some fits. His reason was that, and I'm not sure whether the pain for the family, but when they shot them, multiple shots, the man, and please, people should forgive me, I'm quoting him, says the man just fell like that. I didn't want to use the word they used because it may be offensive. People won't understand me. But the lady attempted to, on her knees, come towards them. He says on that basis, they took a decision that burn the bodies. And then he also believed in some mystical, this superstition and the rest. So they cut, you know, Kubran Japan's father, they cut the leg to the knee, and for ritual purposes.
Okay, Kweku, let's end it there. But of course, the invitation that audiences are putting to you, I think, is just in order, so that
it's work in progress.
It's work in progress. They know about that. That's why they are asking for it. Okay.